Welcome everybody to the Laser channel where we learn, create, and share. My name is Greg, and in today's video, I'm extremely fortunate to have both the Monport Reno 65 Pro machine and the Reno 45 Pro machine, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun to do a direct comparison between these two machines. This video is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be checking out what's similar and what's different between these two machines. And to get things started, let's check out the accessories included with each of the machines. The 65 Pro comes with these knife blades if I'm going to be doing a lot of laser cutting on the machine, a set of hose clamps. It also includes the hose, and I've got a couple of tools, some Allen wrenches for doing maintenance on the machine, an adjustment wrench for setting the focus on the machine, a manual focus gauge, 2 rolls of double-sided tape, and a nice updated user manual. Not pictured, there's also a power cable, and here I've got the USB cable, safety glasses, and a water pump. The Reno 45 Pro has the same knife blades. They are going to, of course, be a little bit shorter than the 65 Pro, and I have the same toolkit for maintenance and setting the focus of the laser machine. Again, it comes with 2 hose clamps. The other hose clamp is installed on the machine. I have 2 rolls of that double-sided tape, the manual focus gauge, the user manual. This one being the first release of the Reno 45 Pro is a little bit outdated. The newer manuals have more information in them. Not pictured is the power cable, but I do have the same USB cable, safety glasses, and it does come with a water pump. Taking a step back, we'll see that both machines essentially have the same accessories. Let's check out the contents of the USB drive. On the left-hand side, I have the 65 Pro, and it comes with auto laser and a trial version of Lightburn software that's good for 30 days. Auto laser, there's also a user manual. I have some process parameters for Lightburn that I can load in, and I have the manual for the Reno series and the Top Wisdom USB driver. When you check out the right-hand side of the screen, I have essentially the same things for the Reno 45. Something really important to keep in mind is if I'm going to be running Lightburn software, I first have to install the Top Wisdom USB driver. That way, Lightburn software can auto-detect the Reno Pro machine. This is going to be the same whether it's the 65 Pro or the 45 Pro. If I'm using the Reno machine that is not the Pro version, the machine is not going to be Lightburn compatible. It's only the Reno Pro that is Lightburn compatible. The similarities are going to continue between the both machines with the outside construction. On both machines, the front and the sides are going to be a nice contemporary aluminum construction, while the bottom and the back of the machine are going to be steel. Again, on both machines, the entire top surfaces are going to be a smoked black acrylic, again complementing the updated contemporary look of the Reno series. It's when I break out the tape measure that we're going to see the differences between the 65 Pro and the 45. The 65 Pro is going to come in at a total width of 39.5 inches. The depth is going to come in at about 27.5 inches, keeping in mind that I'll need to leave a little bit extra room for the hose to exit out the back of the machine. On the 45 Pro, we'll take the measurement and see that we've got 31.5. And when we take the depth measurement or the width, it's going to be a little bit narrow at 22.75 of an inch. The 65 Pro has a feature-packed display with a 2.4-inch color screen. The 45 Pro gets the identical display. The identical displays have multiple functions that can be directly controlled through the panel, such as movement, positioning, pointing, preview, start, pause, parameter settings, and much more. The Pro version also supports Wi-Fi communication. Both the 65 Pro and 45 Pro adapt a 7-segment S-shaped acceleration and deceleration curve and adaptive speed planning algorithm while supporting one-click setting of speed parameters and small circle speed limits. Different cutting parameters can be selected for different shapes, and reverse clearance composition is also supported. This is already programmed into the machine and is invisible to us users. This is one of the fanciest ways of saying it's fast and it's precise. Wow, that took several takes to get all of that in one take. Both machines are also the same in that they support a USB 2.0 interface, and it supports a computer USB communication and USB disk reading directly on the top of the display. On the side of the 65 Pro, I have the USB cable input, the main power switch, and this large aluminum emergency stop button. The 65 Pro is the same in the functionality, USB input, the same power switch, an emergency stop button. It is aluminum, but this button is quite a bit smaller than the 65 Pro. On the back of the 65 Pro, we've got the main power input. If I'm missing a ground off of my outlet, this is equipped with a separate ground lug, and just above that is the accessory plug for the water pump that we saw at the beginning of the video. There's also two vents, and in the middle is the 4-inch exhaust tube. Behind that is an adequate 4-inch exhaust fan. And lastly, I have the water inlet and outlet. The inlet just happens to be blue. Usually it's clear just like this one, but it doesn't affect the functionality of the machine. Now let's check out the back of the 45 Pro. It has the same power plug in. Right next to that is that auxiliary ground lug, and just above that is the auxiliary outlet for the water pump. We'll see that one of the differences, there's no extra venting on the back of the 45 Pro. The exhaust hose on the 45 Pro is also larger at 5 inches, which I personally didn't like because in the United States, a 5-inch duct hose isn't really all that common. 4-inch, like we saw in the 65 Pro, is more common. And down in this corner, I have the inlet and the outlet to go out to either the water pump or my chiller of choice. The 65 Pro, being a more powerful machine over the 45 Pro, is also going to offer a much larger work area. The 65 Pro comes in at 16 inches by 24 inches, while the 45 Pro comes in at 16 inches by 12 inches. Another way to take a look at this is the Reno 45 is half the work area of the 65. As we saw earlier, both machines include these knife blades for the work area, and both machines include the appropriate size honeycomb that is also magnetic, which is perfect for when I want to use my red magnets to securely hold my work material in place. Here's the work area of the 65 Pro. The laser head assembly. The 65 Pro does have a flow switch for the air assist. Here's the Y-axis motor. Adjusting the bed height on the 65 Pro. And now I'm switching over to the 45 Pro. The laser head assembly is identical to the 65 Pro, along with the linear rails for both the Y-axis and the X-axis. And the close-up of the Y-axis motor, which is the same physical size as the one on the 65 Pro. Setting the bed height on the 45 Pro is identical as the 65 Pro. Everything in the work area of the 45 Pro is essentially the same, except that there's no flow control for the air assist. Both machines feature a removable metal crumb tray and a convenient connector location for utilizing a rotary attachment. Here's that same crumb tray and connector on the 45 Pro. Both machines have an easy adjust mirror system. Here's mirror number 1, mirror number 2, and mirror number 3. Both machines use a 12mm diameter focusing lens with a 50mm focal length. Hey, I hope that you're enjoying this video. If you are, give it a like. It would be really neat. Now, speaking of things really neat, in just a minute, I'm going to be pulling the side panel off of the machines so that we can check out the air assist pumps and some of the electronics. But before that, we're going to talk about water cooling. We saw earlier that both machines include one of these pond pumps, and the general idea is that we purchase on our own a brand new water bucket, usually a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. We put a couple gallons of distilled water in, and we drop the submersible pump in and connect up the water lines that we saw on the back of the machine. And that honestly will get us up and going and using the machine. And I think it's a great way to just initially start trying things out on the laser machine. However, when I start doing projects or all-day use, or I just start using the machine more often, that's where I like to use something like a CW5200 active water chiller, especially on the Reno 65. It is, of course, 65 watts, and the work area is much larger, which means I can work the laser tube a bit harder, and I'm going to be making these larger projects that are going to be more laser time. And with that CW5200 active water chiller, it's going to keep my water temperatures under control all day long. The 45 Pro having a smaller work area and of course less laser wattage opens up a few more options for water cooling. The CW300 would be a good choice for the Reno 45, especially if we were not going to be running projects all day long. The CW300 is not an active water chiller. It does contain a radiator, however, that radiator is only going to cool the water down to the ambient room temperature, or maybe just a little bit warmer than that. What it does have is a very large water reservoir of upwards of nearly 3 gallons, which means it's going to take a while for this machine during intermittent use to heat up that water reservoir. Here's the water system that I'm using on my 45 Pro. It's pretty basic and rudimentary. It's a radiator, water pump, power supply, and a 1-quart water reservoir. And this works pretty well when I'm doing smaller projects on my 45 Pro. I had thought about making a whole separate video on how to build one of these yourself, but I quickly realized that buying all these individual components ended up costing the same or more than a CW300, but instead of having a half-gallon reservoir, that CW300 has nearly 3 gallons, giving me a lot more runtime before the water system starts to overtemp. And now it's time to check out some of the inner parts of the Reno machine. Time to see what's hiding behind this panel. Big reveal. Check out all this cool stuff inside. This cluster, we already know what that is. That's all the switches and USB ports that we saw from earlier. Along here I have this gray Panduit wire duct, which is a nice way to keep everything neat and clean inside of the machine. I'll move this cable out of the way, and I think we should be able to see it right here and here are 2 motor drives for the X and Y axes. This is the air assist pump, and it's the identical one found on the 45 Pro. On the 45 Pro, I found this was a perfect balance of airflow for both cutting and engraving. On the 65 Pro, I've been using the stock air pump, and I think it's been working pretty well. However, down the road, if I ever want to upgrade this, I can simply disconnect it, and on the chassis, there's a knockout punch right here. I can remove that, and from the new air pump, I can run the air line in and connect up to the existing one. And by the way, the 45 Pro has the same access point on the back of the chassis. In this area right behind the air assist pump, there's a bunch more stuff. I'll get my light on it, so hopefully we can see it quite a bit better. Here I've got the main power wires. I've of course got the power cable disconnected. Back behind that, up in this area, is going to be the auxiliary outlet for the water pump. This, which looks like a water line, is actually the high voltage line going up to the laser tube that's just above right here. I really like it when the manufacturers run the high voltage line inside of the silicone tubing. It's extra insulation so that high voltage line doesn't leak voltage into the rest of the chassis of the machine. Now this might be a stretch. If we look really deep inside there, we're going to see a component. It's packed in there pretty deep, but that is the power supply that runs the high voltage out to the laser tube. And if we look somehow through that high voltage power supply, there's going to be a standard power supply that runs basically all the control electronics on the Reno series machine. This has been a lot of fun checking out these two machines, finding out what's similar and what's different. And we've been finding out between the two machines, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. And of the two machines, this is the newer one into the laser channel here. I've got a lot more runtime on the 45 Pro, and I do honestly have to say, I really do love that machine. It's been a rock solid performer for me, and everything just always works on it when I go to use it. And the same thing is holding true so far with the 65 Pro as well. Part of making this video is I realize that a lot of people are on the fence whether or not they want to get the 65 Pro or the 45 Pro. And I think the bigger questions are, do you have a budget that you're working with, or do you have some size constraints for where this machine could be placed? Now, if you've got a budget and you've got a smaller work area, that's where I would recommend the 45 Pro. It's a lot easier on the budget, and I don't think this machine needs an active water chiller. That CW300 I think would work quite well for quite a few projects, and that also helps out with the budget. The machine being smaller is also quite a bit lighter. Now, on the other hand, if budget is still an issue but not so troublesome and you have the space, by all means, take a look at the 65 Pro. However, like we did see earlier in the video, I do recommend having an active water chiller, and that also adds to the cost of getting the machine up and running. Now, some of the other considerations for the 65 Pro, with it of course being larger, it is much heavier. The 45 Pro, I can kind of move that on my own if I'm very careful with it, but the 65 Pro, it's just larger and it's upwards of nearly 100 pounds. I think it comes in at about 89 pounds without any of the accessories like the honeycomb installed inside the machine. And for me, that's definitely a two-person job to move the machine around. It also means that the workbench that it's on also has to be really solid. When this machine is moving around at high speeds, I don't want the table shuffling around either. I want a nice solid foundation for the machine to be attached to. Now, something that we may have not thought about with the larger powered 65 Pro machine is, even if I'm doing some smaller, more delicate work that could easily be handled by the 45 Pro, that just means that the larger machine is going to be running at lower power levels, and that's going to make the laser tube last so much longer on this larger machine. See, the more power that we drive through a laser tube, the shorter it makes the lifespan. So if I can reduce the power going out to the laser tube and still get the same work out of this than I do out of that, that means that the laser tube will last that much longer out of the 65 Pro. When I was think tanking this video, I thought this would be the time of the video where I'd do a sample project, one on one machine and that identical project on the other machine with the same material. And the more I thought about that, I don't think that's going to be a good comparison between the two machines. A lot comes down to the mirror alignment and how well the focus is set. And honestly, on both of these machines, those are both really easy to do. It's easy to set the mirror alignment and set the focus. The other thing that I realized is, in the background, off camera, I have been making projects on this machine and on the smaller 45 machine. And really, when I set those projects down on a table and I don't keep track of which project came off of what machine, I can't tell the difference. The quality level between the two machines is virtually identical. I also thought about doing some cut tests between the two machines, and well, this being 65 watts is obviously going to have more cutting power, and it really comes down to the focal length of the lens on the machine on how deep it can cut, especially with this 65 watt machine. Off camera, I was cutting some 3/4 inch clear acrylic, which both machines were able to do. This one was a little bit easier, of course. The cleanliness of that cut, though, really came down to the focal length of the laser, which is 2 inches on both machines. If I wanted to get a cleaner cut, that's where I would switch over and purchase a 4-inch focal length, which is going to give me a better, deeper cutting ability on either machine that I would pick. I do have more content planned for the Reno machines. I'm thinking about mounting a camera system on one of these machines. I think it might work a little bit better on the Reno 45. However, I think I do have to send this one out pretty soon. And that means I really can't take the cover and put a hole in the middle of it to mount a camera system. So that might end up going on the other larger machine. Thanks for joining me in this video, and until we meet again in the next video, learn, create, and share.